Hello, my name is Mick and welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram MinusMick7, MinusMick7 and on TikTok Mad Mickey as well. Welcome to a very special but spur of the minute video. The moment Michael Rosenbaum became the definitive Lex Luthor for me, and I think millions upon millions of people around the world. Now, my story with Superman goes back to me being a child and Superman 1978, Superman the movie, directed by my favourite director, Richard Donner, starring Christopher Reeve, Margot Kidder, Gene Hackman, Marlon Brando. It was the first film these eyes ever saw. And that it made a huge impression on me. It made me fall in love with Superman film. At first I wanted to be Superman, then I wanted to make Superman. So as a kid I was obsessed with the Christopher Reeve Superman movies, even the ones that weren't as good as the first couple of movies. For me, Superman 78 is my favourite movie, but I do love Man of Steel and I have a soft spot for elements of Superman Returns. But I think that Smallville goes next to Superman 78 as one of the definitive adaptations of Superman, and next to Smallville after Superman 78 would be Man of Steel. But Smallville is very special to me. When I first heard it was happening, it was described as a Superboy TV show. I don't want a Superboy TV show. I want an epic and awesome Superman movie. It's not fair. Anyway, I remember I was hungover one morning. I was going through the channels, and then I go on Channel 4. They had something called Teen 4, and they called it T4. So there's this bald guy on the screen, and the caption said Smallville. Well, I thought there's only one Smallville, the town that Clark Kent grew up in. Superman grew up in when he was young. So I'm praying, please make that bald guy be Lex Luthor. Please. It was Lex Luthor. It was called Michael Rosenbaum as Lex Luthor. I thought he was Lex Luthor from the first moment I ever saw him. When I and many others say Michael is the greatest on-screen Lex Luthor, people say, well, he had a TV show, he was doing it for 7 seasons. He was Lex Luthor from the first time I saw him, from the first time he uttered any dialogue. So I think I watched it in the middle of the pilot, started watching it in the middle of the pilot, or episode 2. Anyway, I fell in love with the charm of this show. It was absolutely fantastic. As the creators and showrunners described Smallville, this truly was the trials of Clark Kent and Lex Luthor. But the moment Michael Rosenbaum became Lex Luthor for me, and I'm sure many others, was a 2-parter in season 3, which would go down as one of the show's darkest seasons. It was also the last season Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, the series producers and creators, would be hands-on, be showrunners hands-on. And after that, you could tell the show wasn't as Gough and Miller centric as it was in its first 3 seasons. The first 3 seasons of Smallville, to me and many fans, are the peak of the show. So these 2 episodes that basically make Michael Rosenbaum the definitive Lex Luthor are separately titled Shattered and Asylum. Lex Luthor has found out that Lionel Luthor, his father, murdered his grandparents. Yes, Lionel murdered his parents for their money. The Luthors go back a long way in this universe. They were always basically criminals. But Lex finds out his father murdered his grandparents. Now, if you've never seen Smallville before, Lex Luthor hasn't done anything evil to this point. He's been somewhat immoral, quaint, but he's not evil. He's not a megalomaniac. He's not a playboy. He's a very interesting young version of Lex Luthor. But what happens is, as Lionel discovers Lex is finding out the truth, he's even working with young Chloe Sullivan, to expose Lionel, because Chloe has this voice message of him confessing that he killed his parents. So Chloe and Lex are working together. But what Lionel starts to do is start showing the world that Lex might be a little bit mental, a little bit insane. And it starts to work. Everyone around Lex starts to doubt his word. At the cold open of the first episode, Shattered, we see the Luthor mansion being shot up. You know, someone shooting at Lex. But when he goes and tells Clark, and Clark comes back with Lex to check out the mansion, everything is all right. Nothing's happened, nothing's been moved, no bullet holes. They do find a little bit of evidence, a broken piece of glass. And Lex is really holding on to this as his evidence. As the episode goes on, we see Lex breaking mentally because nobody believes him. He's being shown, as he's being made to think that he's insane. But his mental health problems go back to the beginning of the season when he was trapped on an island where he fought himself. So he's had to go through these 7 kind of meetings with this counsellor, because apparently at Luthor, because he starts working at Luthor with his father Lionel, they need him to speak to this counsellor for insurance purposes. Now, I'm not sure if Lionel did that on purpose, if he was setting this up from the very beginning so people would question Lex's mental health. So as we go through the episode, he's trying to expose Lionel, and every time he does, it looks like he's insane. Slowly but surely in this episode, he starts to have a mental break. It actually happens. He starts cradling a blanket that he thinks is his dead baby brother, Julian. Later on in the season, it will be revealed that his mother, Lillian, smothered his baby brother, Julian, to death, just to save him from the torturous experience of being Lionel Luthor's son. Obviously, that doesn't justify smothering your child. That is called Memoria. You need to see that episode as well. Season 3 really does a deep dive on Lex Luthor's mental health, and in a way kind of shows you why Lex Luthor becomes Lex Luthor, that he never stood a chance. Some of you may say it's a justification. I don't think that it is. But anyway, it really becomes Todd Phillips Joker-esque, if you like, season 3 of Smallville. So in the end, Lex Luthor is committed to an asylum. And it's a very sad ending because, Clark wants to believe that his friend isn't insane because they're friends in the show. They're nowhere near being enemies. And you see Lionel. Lionel's not proud of what he's done here, that he's made his son go insane, but he can't have anyone knowing that he murdered his parents. As we get to the next episode, Asylum, things take a darker turn where Lionel decides to corrupt the doctor because he wants to give Lex electroshock therapy to wipe his mind. The doctor warns him that it may not necessarily work, that it's highly dangerous. It could kill Lex as well as wipe his mind. So it's a risky thing. But Lionel's willing to risk the death of his son to cover up his crimes. It's very, very dark. Ultimately, what happens is Lex doesn't die and his mind is wiped. As they're doing the procedure, he turns to the doctor, Lionel, Lex's father, and says, "I love my son." In his own twisted way, Lionel does love his son, but he's willing to risk his life to protect his murderous ways. And it's very, very sad. Lex has had about 6-7 weeks wiped from his memories. Now, ultimately, by the end of the season, he will have total recall, but he will have to go to very deep depths to get those memories back. Michael Rosenbaum's performance, I think, earned him a Saturn Award, or at least a Saturn nomination. Michael Rosenbaum is truly a great actor. He doesn't do any acting today. He has his own podcast. He does Inside of You, where he interviews very famous people, and he does Talkville, where he goes back with Tom Welling, who played Clark Kent, and reviews Smallville episodes. But let me tell you, for me, who experienced Smallville, the original run, Michael Rosenbaum's performances were iconic, and he was a brilliant Lex Luthor. Through the 7 seasons, they take us down this journey of starting off of Lex Luthor being friends with Clark Kent, being a reasonable billionaire son, to becoming the megalomaniac we all know and love. That's why I see it as a bit of a betrayal that in season 8, off screen, because Michael's not there anymore, he leaves in season 7, they kill off the character, then bring him back as a clone. I see that as an absolute betrayal, a betrayal of Michael Rosenbaum's hard work as an actor. Smallville was very, very special to me, but Shattered and Asylum is the moment where Michael Rosenbaum became the definitive Lex Luthor. And I'm reminded of something Jonathan Kent says to his son, because Clark has all his powers in Smallville. But Jonathan reminds Clark and us, the audience, there's even people more powerful than you, son. That's a great reminder for those keyboard warriors that keep on telling us that Superman is too powerful. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.